True story. I watched the word love get weaponized before I ever knew what the word actually meant. And the sad part is, I spent years trying to replicate exactly what I saw. So it's only right that tonight I give you that story. But before we jump into that, I want to ask you a question. What does love actually look like to you? Not what you think it should be, or what you read about, or even what you saw in a movie. What is love actually to you based on what you live thus far? Because here's something that a lot of people never consider. Your definition of love was handed to you. In that same house that I spoke of in the last episode, and oh yeah, by the same people who were doing their best given the circumstances that they were given in the broken definition of love. And not only did you take that definition, right? You took it without questioning it. You took it without examining it, and definitely without even giving the option to opt out. And then what happened? You carried it into your relationship. Now, while you think about everything I just told you, I want to welcome you back to the family arc episodes. That's what we're currently in, a family arc. On the first episode, we talked about how your voice was shaped. We talked about how your voice was molded in the house that you grew up in. Well, obviously, tonight, we're going a little deeper. Because, see, one thing I understand about life, one thing I understand about people is it just wasn't your voice that was molded. It was your entire understanding of what love is, what love should cost, and what you're supposed to tolerate in the name of it. And I'm going to be real, for most of us, what we were taught about love in our past is costing us a lot right now in our present. And if we continue to stay this way in our future, let's talk about it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of This Could Get Ugly, featuring Sean D. Upshaw. I would like to thank you for tuning in as always. As tonight we discuss a very important topic. Did your parents teach you what love looked like? And most importantly, what it cost? This is definitely going to be a deep episode. So if you're not here to listen, if you're not here with a open heart to receive, then it's sad to say that you're not ready to get ugly tonight. Matter of fact, you might be in the wrong place. I'm just going to be real with you, as always. Well, let's jump into it. I want you to ask yourself this. Do you realize that your parents' relationship was the first classroom in which you learned about love? Crazy part is you didn't even enroll in it. Hell, you didn't even get a syllabus. So there's no way you had a chance to really opt out of that class. So what happened? I'll tell you what happened. You watched and you watched. Every day you watched, but more importantly, you absorbed. And I'm going to be real with you. We absorbed a lot. But here are three things that I believe we absorbed more than the other things: how conflict was handled, how affection was shown, what sacrifice meant. You absorbed all that, every piece of it. Unconsciously, it became your template. Not because you agree with it, not because you thought it was healthy, excuse me, it was the only model that you were given. And one thing I know about us as people, when we only have one model, we don't have an alternative model. The one model that we're given is the one that primarily becomes our default. And guess what? That's even if it's destroying us. That's even if it's destroying us. So here's what we're going to do. Since you was given that default model, why not talk about the 5 lessons that I believe were installed by having that? I'll share. Lesson 1. Now, I will preface you by saying that it's 2 sides to this. Most of us going to be on the B side. If you want to be honest about it, most of us going to be on the B side. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Lesson 1. What was installed? What love looks like. If you were lucky enough to have parents that showed affection freely, then guess what you learned? You learned that love was warm and it was visible. But on the flip side, where a lot of us reside, if you didn't have those parents, you learned that love was something you're supposed to feel but never see. And guess what we did? We grew up struggling to recognize love even when it's standing right in our face. Because it never looked like anything we've seen before. So we didn't know any better. Lesson 2, what love sounds like. Again, if you had parents that spoke to each other with respect, RESPECT, even when they disagreed, that's the key. You learned that love can hold tension without cruelty. But guess what? On the flip side, I can't be the only one on the flip side. If arguments meant yelling, name calling, threats, silence as punishment, what you learned is that love and pain are inseparable. That conflict always has a winner and a loser. And guess what you did? You carried that exact mentality into relationships where every disagreement feels like a war because that's the only language of conflict you were ever taught growing up. Lesson 3, what love costs. This one right here does the most damage. If love in your household looked like one person giving everything while the other person took, guess what you learn? You learn that love is sacrifice without reciprocity. That the person who loves more is the one who bleeds more. That you prove love by what you're willing to lose, not by what you build together. Now, here's the thing. When I put this list of lessons together, there was no way in hell that I knew my address was going to show up. My childhood address was going to show up in lesson 3. I didn't know that. I'd be curious to see if what I just read, if that same lesson knocked on your door and showed up at your address. Be honest with yourself. But let's move on to lesson 4. What love tolerates. Now, if your parents stayed together, this is my favorite. I want you to listen up. If your parents stayed together through dysfunction, through infidelity, through disrespect, through emotional abuse, disguised as working through it, and my all-time personal favorite, we're staying together for the sake of the kids, guess what you learn? You learn that love means endurance, that leaving is failure. That the measure of love is how much pain you can absorb without quitting. And I hate to bust your bubble, but you grew up tolerating things in your own relationships that should have damn well been deal breakers. Not because you're weak, but because tolerance was molded as loyalty for you, not your fault. Let's move on to lesson 5. What love rewards. If the parent who sacrificed the most was the one who was taken for granted the most, you learn that giving doesn't lead to appreciation. It leads to expectation. And you either became the overgiver who quietly resents their partner, or you became the person who refuses to give fully because you watch what giving everything actually gets you. That's one hell of a one. That's a hell of a one right there. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm going to use that's a hell of a one. I watched that. Seriously, I watched it. Because like I said in the beginning, you didn't choose your definition of love. What you did was you inherited it. And boys and girls, if you've been living, guess what you've been doing? You've been living inside that model ever since. Here's my story. Let me tell you how I arrived at this particular episode with this particular material. I told you at the top of the episode that I watched love get weaponized. Now, let me break it down for you. You see, my love model was built in layers. And each layer inside made the distortion worse. What are you saying, Sean? I'll give you my story. My father was absentee. He was absentee. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and lie and say I didn't know who this fool was, because I did. I even spent a little time with him. But for the most part, I don't know who he is. If he was to die tomorrow and they asked me to speak at his funeral, I wouldn't know what to say because I don't know this man. That's why I say he was absentee. He just wasn't there. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time speaking on him, because when we get deeper into these episodes, you'll get that story. And it's not going to be long and drawn out either, but you'll get that story. I want to tell you that his absence created a vacuum. And into that vacuum stepped another man who wasn't interested in filling it with love. So what was he interested in filling in, Sean? I'll be glad to tell you. It was my stepfather, and only thing he was interested in was using me as a pawn. Why a pawn? Well, I'll tell you why. He didn't care about building me up. He didn't care about raising me. In fact, I believe everything he did was to trigger my mother. Now, how did I reach that? Well, I reached that conclusion based on a lot of mental work that I've done, and just sit back and just watch how things unfolded, right? I believe he did that to control her, and I was just a tool in his hand, not a child in his care. So I believe when he wanted to hurt her, he went through me. I believe when he wanted leverage, I was the leverage. And as a child, I watched the woman who was supposed to be his partner be manipulated through her love for me. I want you to think about what that teaches a young guy growing into a man. I want you to understand that my first front row seat into a romantic relationship between two individuals gave me the lesson that love is a power play. Love is a power play. It also told me that closeness is a weapon, and that the people who care about you can be used against you. We talking about next level manipulation here, ladies and gentlemen. And I was experiencing this, as a young tyke. Craziness. Now, I know a lot of people want to label that as narcissism now, or whatever term you want to use, but whatever the hell it was, I didn't have a word for it. The most important part that I learned is that the person that's supposed to be your partner in life actually might be the most dangerous person in the entire damn house. Now that's crazy. but it's reality. And it was my reality. So with that being my first classroom for love, is from me, excuse me, learning that, between two people, this is what love looks like. I want you to understand that when I read about love in a textbook, it sounded like BS. When I saw it in a movie, a rom-com, which is one of my favorite genres, it sounded like BS. Why it sound like BS? Because I got a front row seat from my own living room of what love or supposed love looked like. I literally seen a man use a child as a tool to control a woman. And the crazy part is my mother, right? My mother, she saw what was happening. She might not have understood that I understood, but she saw what was happening. She felt the weight of it. I know she did. I can see it in her face. And now that we have grown up conversations now that I'm of grown ass man status and we sit down and talk, we she felt the weight of it. I know that. But the response that she gave me, that's what I really want to focus on. Because her way of trying to offset all that damage, right, was to never tell me no. Now, we talked about this last week when it comes to children and parents and never saying no. This is where it started for me. What I'm saying is she basically would give me everything that she could. And it was to accommodate, to absorb, to make sure that if every other source of love was failing me, at least hers was unlimited. Now, as a 45-year-old grown man, I now understand that impulse. Hell, I even respect it. I respect the hell out of it. I understand that she was trying to love me enough for everyone who wasn't. But I don't think she understands what that installed in me, right? Because what it installed was love means total accommodation. Love means giving without limits. Love means one person absorbing all the pain so the other person doesn't have to feel it. And if you stop giving, here's the key. If you stop giving, if you hold anything back, basically you're failing at love. That was the only version I knew. That was the only version that was consistent in my life where someone had to empty themselves in order for me to feel love. But here's the thing. That type of love wasn't just molded in my household. What I'm about to say, and I hate to say it, but it was molded in another place. And that place is church. So what are you saying here, Sean? Trust me, it's not what you think I'm about to say. What I want to tell you is that growing up, the version of God that I was given was a God of sacrifice. Give everything. That was the mantra. Hold nothing back. Suffer for the people you love. That's how you prove pure devotion. And I want to clear something up before we go any deeper in this concerning church. I'm not standing here telling you that church is wrong or that faith is the problem. No. I know a lot of you think I'm a heathen, but that's not what I'm telling you. That's not the conversation here. What I'm telling you is that my parents didn't introduce me to God. They basically assigned me a God. And when I say parents, I mean my mother, basically, because she was the one that was going to church. And that was a specific version, right? A God where love and suffering were the same currency. And I didn't have the option to seek a relationship outside of that, right? To discover what God meant to me personally, because the version was actually preloaded before I was old enough to even question it. And hell, when I did start questioning it, they kicked me out the church. They wrote me off. But anyway, that's another story. But here's what that specific version installed in me, right? If I'm not sacrificing, I'm not loving. If I'm not sacrificing, I'm not loving. How many of you experiencing that right now? Where you feel like if you're not sacrificing, you're not loving. Be honest with yourself because this right here can catch you in some very, very bad predicaments, extremely bad predicaments. It needs to be, excuse me, it needs to be recognized and quickly. And I'm not ashamed to say that that equation ran everything in my life for a very long time. Allow me to share more. What it did. There were times where I gave financially when it made no sense, not only to the church, but in my relationships. And I'm not just talking about just pure generosity here, ladies and gentlemen. No, I'm talking about reckless, irresponsible giving because saying I can't afford it felt like saying, I don't love you enough. My worth in a relationship was measured basically by what I was willing to lose, not what I was willing to build. And from that, I overextended myself emotionally in a lot of my relationships. I carried people's burdens or my partner's burdens, not people. I carried their burdens and they were never mine to carry because I just felt like putting them down would be too selfish of me. Basically, I absorbed their problems and I didn't even create them because that's what love does, right? Or my version of love that I was given, that's what it does. It absorbs. At least that's what I thought. Now, here's the cherry on top. Here's the cherry on top. Here's what's going to get you. When someone loved me, when I got into an actual relationship where I felt like someone loved me and they told me, Sean, you don't have to do all that. You don't have to bleed for me. You don't have to sacrifice. I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel relieved at all. What I felt was useless. And I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds crazy, but I did. I felt useless because, like I said, if I wasn't sacrificing, and excuse me what I'm about to say because I hate this term with every fiber in my being. If I wasn't sacrificing, then what was I bringing to the table? That's the question I would ask myself. Now, I have many examples of what I can give you as far as how I sacrifice. I told y'all probably in episode 2 or 3, I don't remember, that I've been married twice. I've been married twice, but I only count one. And I'm going to tell you why I count one. I only count my second marriage. I don't count my first one just due to the fact of me realizing what I sacrificed in order to accomplish it, right? Now, when I say this, I'm not saying that the first person I married is a bad person. For those who know who I married, she's not a bad person. She's a phenomenal person. But let me tell you where I made my mistake and why I don't count that marriage. I don't count it because I feel like I married her timeline. I didn't marry her. So what are you saying, Sean? I'm saying that through my conversations and talking to her, she had stressed that she wanted to be married at a certain age. By her telling me that, by me loving her, the model that I was given as a child kicked in. I might not have been ready to get married at that age, but guess what? I was willing to sacrifice to make her happy. And that's exactly what I did. And I failed miserably in that marriage. And it cost me a lot. It cost me a lot. But the good thing is I gained a lot. I've gained a lot of experiences. I gained a lot of knowledge. I met a lot of people. But more importantly, I wouldn't be sitting here in this chair giving this story if it wasn't due to the fact that I did what I did. And when I say it cost me a lot, it cost me a lot. Damn near homeless, sleeping on the floor in an apartment in Dallas. Didn't know my next move, trying to figure it out. All because I had the wrong love model. sacrificing. Think about everything that you've sacrificed based on the wrong love model that you were given and unconsciously inherited, thinking is yours. That's the thing. That's what a distorted love model does. It doesn't just affect your behavior, right? It doesn't force you to just make bad decisions. It rewires your entire identity. I didn't just act like love was sacrifice. I believe I was only valuable when I was sacrificing, just like that story just explained to you. And that belief didn't come from a relationship. Like I said, it came from my house, and it came from a church pew, excuse me. And that was long before I decided to take someone's hand and call her my woman. Now, here's the key. I want you to understand, like I told you in the beginning. My stepfather taught me love was a weapon. My mother taught me love was depletion. Crazy part is I spent years, and I do mean years, toggling between the two without knowing either one was a womb. Either one was a womb. I didn't know that. I tell you every week, I've done the work, and I'm continuously doing the work. I don't want you to think this is a completion. It's what you're seeing right now is the result of a decision. But the same decision that you can be given every day when you wake up and open your eyes. I want to go deeper into the transfers of that faulty love model. But let me let me bring something up real quick because I have to bring this up. I wanted to plug as I'm sitting here writing. I was writing my script. I'm like, man, I'm going to put this in here because I need people to understand where I'm coming from and just how crazy this can be if you're not careful. One of the things I want to talk about before I talk about these four transfers is I need to address something that I hear constantly from people on social media, in comments that talk about relationships. And believe it or not, these posts really go viral, which means a lot of people share them and agree. I'm going to break it down for men and women, but let's start with women because I always believe ladies are first. Women, when you say, I want a man who loves me the way my daddy loved my mama, do you know what you mean? Fellas, when you say, I want a woman who loves me like my mama loved me, do you know what you're saying? I would like to believe you do because I'm telling you, every time somebody says it, all I see is everybody nodding, agreeing, liking, thumbs up, hearts, sharing, doing reaction videos to it. But like I said, I need you to actually think about what that's saying. Let's break that down real quick. To the women, when you say, I want a man who loves me like my daddy loved my mama, exactly what version of love are you talking about? Because I'm going to be real with you. You only saw the display version. Now, you can agree to disagree, but I'm telling you, you only saw the display version. And I'll tell you why I say that. You only saw what happened in front of you. The way he opened doors, the way he provided, the way he showed up at events. Yeah, you saw all that, but you didn't get the full picture. You didn't see the conversations that happened behind the bedroom door. You didn't see the moments where your mother had to keep quiet to keep peace. You didn't see the compromises, the silent resentments, the things she tolerated because leaving wasn't the option that she gave herself. Here's a news flash. I'm not going to go any further with that. Here's a news flash. What you're doing when you say something like that, I want a man who loves me the way my daddy loved my mama, you're modeling after your father's love, of course, but you're modeling after the performance of that love. Because again, you don't know what was going on behind closed doors because your mama ain't gonna tell you and your daddy gonna keep performing. And if you're not careful, you're gonna continue choosing men who perform, beautifully without ever testing whether the substance matches the show. And I want you to know that's not a standard. What that is a trap dressed up as tradition. I had to tell you that. I hope you're listening. Now let's go to the fellas. I hope you think you're not off the hook, right? Fellas, when you say I want a woman who loves me like my mama, trust me, I was guilty of saying this before. I need you to hear what you're actually asking for. Because, see, you need to understand that a mother's love is unconditional. She forgives you for anything and everything. She, for the most part, most mothers, I ain't gonna say all mothers because I know some tough cookies, but she made excuses for your behavior. She cleaned up your messes when you should have cleaned them up your damn self. And guess what? She even called you king or prince when you were acting anything but. Be real with yourself. Be real with yourself. But also be real about that's not romantic love. That's maternal love. And any man who enters a relationship expecting his partner to love him like his mother, I'm going to be the one to tell you, you're not looking for a wife if marriage is the goal, or you're not looking for a monogamous partner if that is your goal. What you're looking for is a second mother. Because one thing I understand about a monogamous partner or a wife, which I've experienced both, is they are people who won't tolerate your BS. In fact, they will implement accountability and they will be someone who will make sure you grow. They will be, that's not going, bottom line, that's not going to be your mother. And if you find someone to act like your mother, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. That standard alone is going to deplete that woman. And she's either going to resent you or you're going to wind up hating her because she's going to make your life hell. I'm just being real. So I can't give you, we've been at this for a few weeks. I can't give you problems without giving you solutions, right? So here's your solutions. Here's what I want both of you to consider, both genders, men and women. Instead of modeling your love, now I want you to listen, instead of modeling your love after your mother and your father, right? The incomplete version that you saw, or the completed version that you believe you saw, right? What I want you to do is create your own. Yeah. Why not give it a clean slate? Why not create your own model of love? One that you can define consciously, right? One built on what you've examined up to this point, what you've decided to be up to this point, not what you inherited. Because here's the possibility that should excite you. Your capacity for love just might go beyond your parents. The ceiling they hit in their relationship doesn't have to be your ceiling. The limitations they accepted don't have to be your limitations. But you'll never find that out if you spend your whole life trying to recreate a version of love that was never as complete as you thought it was. That's the realness of it. What are you saying, Sean? Stop trying to replicate your parents' love is exactly what I'm saying to you. They were working with unexamined tools. Right now, you're in position to build something very successful because you have the tools. Open your eyes and see them. Now let's get to these transfers, the 4 transfers. Now let me show you exactly what happened when your inherited model, the one we've been talking about, runs your relationship. Transfer 1. Because I don't want to hold you guys for too much longer. Transfer 1. You replicate what you saw. What do you mean, Sean? If your mother was the one who gave everything while your father took, or vice versa, you are either repeating that dynamic, or you running from it so hard that you overcorrected into the opposite extreme. The overgiver becomes the overgiver. The child who watched one parent get taken for granted becomes the person who gives and gives quietly and then tracks whether you're getting enough back. Yeah. Transfer two, you normalize what you witness. If your parents yelled, you think yelling is normal. Remember, we talked about that. That's what's passed down to you in the install. You think yelling is normal. If your parents went days without speaking after a fight, you think silence is valid. If your parents stayed together through things that should have ended the relationship, you think endurance is the same thing as commitment. And I'm here to tell you, no, the hell it is not. Your tolerance for dysfunction is directly proportioned to the level of dysfunction you were raised in. That's the truth right there for you. And here's the part that will bother you. You don't even know that your tolerance is calibrated wrong. You don't even know it. You're just operating out. You're just operating out of it. You don't know it. Because when dysfunction is all you've seen growing up, we talked about this all the time. It doesn't feel like dysfunction. It actually feels like home. That's why you stay in it. Transfer three, you choose partners who fit the model. This is the one that nobody wants to hear. Why? Because you are not randomly choosing partners, ladies and gentlemen. You are casting them unconsciously. You are selecting people who fit the role your parents played because your nervous system recognizes that dynamic as love. Newsflash. Some of you call it a type. And I'm going to tell you that continuously picking from a type is going to keep your ass in trouble. Let me give you an example. If love was distance in your house, you're attracted to unavailability. You're attracted to an unavailable man or unavailable woman. You think I'm lying? I'm telling you, just ask yourself these serious questions. I'm being real with you. Let's go to transfer 4. You punish your partner for your parents' failures. Now, I've done this before. Yeah, this one right here is a doozy. This one right here is the hardest to admit. Some of you are holding your partner accountable for a debt your parents created. That's the gist of it. I need you to understand something up to this point. Your relationship or if you're not in one, your past relationships, if you want to study them, are the most accurate mirrors of your family system that exists. The only question is, are you willing to look? That's what it boils down to. And if you're ready to look, why not do an audit? We've been auditing since I started back doing this podcast. Why not do an audit? So let me tell you about how you audit, right? And this I want you to know this isn't just a theory. Nah, this is homework. I want you to write this down. This is stuff that I put my blood, sweat, and tears in that I feel could help you in the long run. So let's break this down into 4 steps. Let's start with step 1, right? In 1 or 2 sentences, I want you to write down, what I want you to do is describe your parents' relationship as you experienced it as a child. Not how they described it, how it actually was when nobody was watching. Was it one gives, one takes, both avoid, one controls, one complies, high conflict, no repair, functional in public, dead in private? You have to name it precisely because vague answers only keeps the pattern going. Doesn't help you. Audit step number 2, trace the transfer. Now, I want you to look at your last serious relationship, or hell, if you're in one right now, I want you to look at it. What does your parents' model show? Where does your parents' model show up? Excuse me. Not as an exact copy, right? It's rarely exact. What happens is it mutates, but the DNA is there. It's still the same. What I mean is if your parents' model was one gives, one takes, as I used the example before, are you the giver or the taker? If your parents avoided conflict, do you avoid it too? Or did you overcorrect into something who forces confrontation? Believe me, the pattern is there. You just have to find it. Audit step number 3. Identify what you've been calling love that isn't. This is the hardest step, and I'm going to tell you why. You need to look at your behaviors. That's why it's the hardest step. You've been performing in the name of love and ask, is this actually love? Or is this a womb dressed up as devotion? That's what you have to do. Sacrificing your financial stability for a partner, is that love or a need to prove your value through depletion? Tolerating disrespect because leaving feels like failure. A lot of people going to jump into that one. Is that a commitment or an inherited loyalty model? And the last one is giving until you're empty, and calling it selflessness. Is that generosity or a belief that your worth is measured by what you're willing to lose? These are some serious questions, ladies and gentlemen. That's why this is called This Can Get Ugly, because I'm telling you, if you do exactly what I'm asking you to do, this will get ugly. You might want to hide in the closet because you might bust a tear or two. But you have to name this behavior. And then you have to name what's actually underneath it, because you have to name the behavior. You have to name what's underneath it, because the gap, that's where the work is. The most dangerous thing about an inherited love model is that it doesn't feel inherited. It feels like it's yours. And that's why you never question it. So, yeah, those are the audit questions you need to ask. And once you ask, right, it's only right that you go to the rebuild. It's only right that you begin to start choosing your own definitions, right? Because once you named it, traced it, and separated what's love from wombs, you have decisions to make, ladies and gentlemen. You can keep it, you can keep the inherited model, what we've been talking about up to this point, or you can write your own. What I would prefer you do. Create. By the way, create is a God-given ability. I would use it if I was you, because God will open some doors and show you some things. I'm just saying, not trying to be all spiritual on here, but I'm just being real with you. So here's some decisions that will pop up. What will love look like in your life going forward? Not based on what you saw, based on what you're actually choosing. If you can articulate, what love looks like to you, independent of your parents' model, independent of what you learned in that house or in that church, like me, then guess what? You're still running their program, or are you still running that church's program? Decision 2, what will I no longer tolerate in the name of love? One thing I learned about individuals in my 45 years of being on this earth is everyone has a threshold. Most people's threshold were set by their family. Excuse me. I need you to reset yours unconsciously, right? Because it's conscious now, because I'm giving it to you and I'm telling you that you need to reset it. I need you to question, what behavior did you watch your parents accept that you refuse to accept now? That's a decision. You need to name that. That's what they call boundaries, my friend. Decision 3, what will love cost? And what will love never cost? See, love requires investment, but investment and depletion are not the same thing. If your model says love should cost you your peace, your finances, your identity, or your self-respect, that model is broken like a mother. Yeah, you know the rest of that word. I need you to get in there and rewrite those terms, ladies and gentlemen. Decision 4, the last one. Every time you feel the urge to overgive, to sacrifice beyond reason, I'm talking to myself, but I'm giving you this advice. To prove your love through suffering, stop. Right there. Stop in your tracks. I need you to stop and ask yourself, am I doing this because it's right? Or am I doing this because my programming says I'm not enough unless I'm bleeding? Let me repeat that. Stop and ask yourself, am I doing this because it's right? Or am I doing this because my programming says I'm not enough unless I'm bleeding? Here's what I need you to understand, ladies and gentlemen, as we get to the close. Writing your own love model is the most radical act of self-determination you will ever commit. Because you're not just choosing how to love someone, you're choosing how to be loved. And that's important, period. Believe me, it's important. If you take nothing from this episode, at least take that. I'm just being real. So in closing, this is what I want to tell you. Here's the mistake I made. I spent years loving people the way I was taught. I mean, sacrificing, depleting, measuring my worth by what I was willing to lose for someone else. And I thought it was love. I seriously did. And I will stand on the mountaintops and scream that I thought that was love. But that version never really benefited me. And whatever version of love that you're using, given by the model from your parents' home or church or any other place, atmosphere that gave you your definition of love, it won't benefit you. It's not going to benefit you. I made a decision, and I need you to make the decision. I'm not doing that shit no more. I need you to have the same attitude. I need you to adapt that attitude. And I'm not saying I'm not doing it because I figured everything out. Like I told you, I'm a work in progress. I wake up every day and make the decision to be this way. Remember, we don't deal in healed. Nothing is ever complete. We deal in healing, making the decision and being willing to go forward every day and become better. I had to audit. I did the audit. I named the model. I traced it back to its source. And then I decided consciously that the version of love that I handed was no longer a version for me. And that's the code that I live by today. And that's the code I want you to live by starting today. That's all I'm asking you to do, ladies and gentlemen. But here's the key thing. Don't blame your parents. I'm not asking you to blame them. I don't want you to be angry at the church either, if that's where you learned it as well. I just want you to be honest enough to look at the definition of love you're operating from and ask yourself one question. Did I choose this, or was it chosen for me? Now, I'm going to do something that I usually don't do. I'm going to tease you about the next episode, right? The next episode, we're going to get deeper into this family arc. Going deeper. It's more roots, way at the bottom, below this. Because just like love, or a false sense of love, modeled you, right? I want you to know that in the midst of that, you were given a role, an assignment, a position in your family that you have been unconsciously performing in every room you walked in since it's been given to you. We're going to name that role next week. And we're going to decide if you're going to keep playing it, or are you going to rewrite it? Keep asking yourself that question. Don't forget to subscribe for the channel for clarity. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Hope you learned something. That's all it is. And remember, when you do the work, things can get ugly. Peace.